Number Games, 9/11 to Coronavirus, by Zachary K. Hubbard. Read, recorded, and edited by JohnLothe. Chapter 3. 222 months later, from 9/11 to the coronavirus pandemic. Measuring from September 11, 2001, the date of the infamous attacks on the World Trade Center, to March 11, 2020, the date the World Health Organization declared a global coronavirus pandemic, was precisely 222 months later. This matters for a number of reasons. We'll begin with the Jesuit and Freemason motto, order out of chaos, summing to 222 with reverse simple English. The motto ties in with the often heard phrase spoken by politicians, never let a good crisis go to waste. It is a simple strategy that involves creating a problem or a group of related problems that allows the problem creator to then offer a solution to a party that does not know the true origins of the problem, so that the problem creator can become the authority figure and expert on the matter before solving the problem they've created. This strategy results in a desirable outcome for the problem creator, and usually not for the party looking for a solution that has been deceived by the conspirator. This is because the unknowing party ends up giving up something valuable that they would not otherwise have given up unless it resulted in them believing it was a fair exchange, so that they could be protected from the new problem or problems. This concept also ties in perfectly with what we discussed about false flag attacks in the last chapter. For example, knocking down towers, then blaming the attack on a man in a cave, and then offering security from terrorist threats in exchange for giving up the right to privacy from government and big tech intrusion, is how this strategy works. Regarding coronavirus, the same tactics are being used to set up and actively test a surveillance grid for the entire nation's smartphone-carrying population, under the guise of keeping us safe from germs. Only the deceived fall for it, time and time again, because they are made afraid through mainstream media that is controlled by the cabal that pumps fear, anxiety, and confusion 24/7, 365. With that being said, hopefully by the time you're done reading this book, you'll be ready to go full Roddy Piper from the film They Live. And if you have no idea what I'm referencing, you need to seek out the film They Live as soon as you finish reading today, because it is important we achieve the outcome that is reached in the film, and preferably with a lot less violence. That outcome is stopping the mainstream media's biggest weapon of all, the TV, from poisoning the world every single day, by shutting it down. And I must say, the movie is a beautiful illustration of how the language of Gematria gives a person a new lens or enhanced perspective that allows them to see through the matrix of misinformation that they are bombarded with every single day. Not by chance, They Live's motto is, "They live, we sleep," summing to 74 in Pythagorean, similar to how Gematria, English, occult, and the rest of our learning from the first chapter sums to 74. Returning to the subject of order out of chaos, an important point needs to be made. The word chaos alone, the word chaos alone, sums to 19 with Pythagorean gematria class, alone. The word chaos alone sums to 19 with Pythagorean gematria. This matters because from 2001, the year of the September 11th attacks, to 2020, the year of the coronavirus pandemic, is 19 years later. The number 19 gains its relevance with the tarot deck, because the 19th card is the sun card, and we are on a solar calendar system, the Gregorian calendar, where the sun dictates time. Before the Gregorian and Julian calendars, the most common way to keep time throughout the world was by the 13 cycles of the moon that are easily observed and counted. What is interesting about the moon in relation to the Gregorian calendar is that every 19 years, the moon appears in the same place in the sky as it was 19 years prior, also meaning that it will be in the same place 19 years later. This is why on the Hebrew calendar, the oldest ongoing calendar in the world. Every 19 years, the Hebrew holy days fall on the exact same date and are organized by the cycles of the moon. This point about 19 also relates to why the first case of coronavirus confirmed outside of mainland China in the world was confirmed in Seattle, one of the few large cities in the world, equating to 19 with Pythagorean gematria. Let us not forget the World Trade Centers in New York were built by the firm from Seattle, or that the World Trade Organization protests in Seattle that gained much international attention began precisely 93 weeks before the demise of the World Trade Centers in New York, where 93 is a number representing time and is highly relevant to 9/11 as covered. The next 222 in the ritual connecting September 11th, 2001, coming 222 months prior to the coronavirus pandemic, is Wuhan coronavirus, summing to 222 with simple English. Of course, this is the culprit being used to spring forth the order out of chaos agenda yet again. New York also sums to 222 with simple English, meaning New York alone sums to 111, reminding us that September 11th leaves 111 days left in the Gregorian year. The reason New York matters is because it was the most impacted city in the world on September 11th, 2001. And in terms of coronavirus, it has once again been reported as the hardest hit city in the world in terms of cases and deaths, as of the time of the publishing of this book, July of 2020. Furthermore, Event 201, simulating the coronavirus outbreak, took place in New York, October 18th, 2019. And not by chance, if you write out Event 201, those numbers spelled out sum to 222 with simple English. And then for the clincher, the main sponsor of Event 201, the World Economic Forum, has a name equating to 222 with simple English as well. They're out of Switzerland, same as the World Health Organization, the United Nations, and the Bank of International Monetary Settlements. Of course, Switzerland is the land of Knights Templar bankers who serve the Catholic Church. This is also why the Swiss Guard protect the Vatican. Moving ahead, the 222 value of World Economic Forum pairs perfectly with the ritual of Donald Trump speaking at the World Economic Forum on January 21st, 2020, his 222nd day of his age, a man born June 14th, 1946. His reason for speaking was to gloat about his trade deal with China that he signed off on January 15, 2020. This becomes all the more curious when you recognize the official story is that an airline traveler from Wuhan, China, infected with the coronavirus, landed in Seattle, Washington, January 15, 2020, and then tested positive for the virus in Seattle on January 21st, the same day Trump was speaking to the World Economic Forum. That, once again, was the main sponsor of Event 201, the coronavirus outbreak simulation, that was co-hosted by Bill and Melinda Gates out of Seattle, summing to 115 with reverse Pythagorean gematria, not unlike the date January 15, or 1/15. At the same time, January 15th can be expressed as 15/1, like 151, and pandemic sums to 151 with reverse simple English gematria. And further, January 15, 2020 had numerology of 56, connecting to coronavirus with Pythagorean. Never mind that on January 22nd, 2020, the day after the first case of coronavirus was confirmed in the United States, Netflix debuted the documentary Pandemic, starring Bill Gates. And while we're at it, never mind Netflix's other recent documentary at the time, Explained, The Next Pandemic, also starring Bill Gates, that released November 7th, 2019, just before the first case was confirmed in the world, where Gates laid out the year that would become 2020, before it happened, almost as if he was a prophet, or if he had the script. Also not by chance, November 7th leaves 54 days in the year, connecting to Jesuit order. And better than that, Explained The next pandemic equates to 251, with simple English, the 54th prime number. If you check the notes of Trump's speech to the World Economic Forum from that same day, you will notice the start time was 11:47 local. Master numbers, where once again, President, White House, Trump, government, and authority each equate to 47. This detail jives with the fact that the World Health Organization, just down the road from the World Economic Forum, has an establishment date of April 7th, or 4/7, or 7/4, signature numbers of the cabal. It also syncs with the fact that Seattle, Washington, Bill Gates' land, is on the 47th parallel north. These details serve as a reminder of the repetitive nature of the code, and that Donald Trump is a puppet on strings, a man that became president at 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days old. And because I knew the code then, I said then, order out of chaos sums to 777 in Jewish Gematria, and he'll be the order out of chaos president. These days, it's hard to say otherwise. Coming back to the distance of 222 months from 9/11 to the coronavirus pandemic's declaration, and the phrase order out of chaos equating to 222, it is important we understand what the digit 2 represents in numerology terms. Keep in mind, in numerology, all numbers are dualistic, meaning they have two sides, one positive and one negative. On the positive side, the number 2 symbolizes the ability to come together, to build, to create, and in the cabal's eyes, they are building their new world order. It is their one world government, united with one language and one electronic and easily traceable currency, under one watchful eye, one illicit act at a time. Thus, why in New York it went from the Twin Towers to One World Trade Center, a name equating to 93 with Pythagorean, the number related to time, and being a signature of the cabal. On the subject of 93 and the number 2, remember, 93 represents time in two ways, through the sun, said to be 93 miles away on average, and Saturn, the keeper of time, counting time in darkness, as opposed to the sun, with its light. At the same time, the number 2 represents the possibility of being taken apart or deconstructed, and that is what we, the people of the world, are witnessing at this time, the dismantling of the world as we knew it, so that it can be replaced with something that is more beneficial in the eyes of the cabal. A world where their power and influence is omnipresent, and we have little opportunity to escape their watchful eyes and listening ears that are the screens, cameras, listening devices, and surveillance systems of the world. It will also be a world where more and more of the wealth is controlled by them. Case in point, it was no accident June 4th, 2020, when mainstream media reported that tech billionaires had increased their net worth by $565 billion in the time of the pandemic, with 56-year-old Jeff Bezos of Amazon being named the biggest beneficiary, 144 days after his January 12th birthday. As we know, those numbers scream Jesuit Order and Society of Jesus. It was for this same reason that on July 2nd, 2020, it was reported that Jeff Bezos had broken his own personal record, becoming worth $172 billion, exactly 172 days after his birthday. Keep in mind, the Jesuit motto, ad majorem de gloriam, equates to 172 with simple English, and where Bezos equates to 72, so does Jesuit Order, corresponding with the date July 2nd, or 7/2. Furthermore, with simple English, Amazon, Vatican, and Francis each equate to 70 with simple English, whereas coronavirus equates to 70 with reverse Pythagorean gematria. And you have to love that the first Jesuit pope is Francis, in light of the Jesuits coming from France, equating to 47, also like Vatican, and reminding us that Amazon is headquartered in Seattle, on the 47th parallel north, and they are truly taking over the world in the time of coronavirus. And the 56th mayor of Seattle, essentially an employee of Amazon since the company owns Seattle, Jenny Durkin, whose name sums to 47 with Pythagorean. And just wait until we get to her big 56 ritual on her 47th day of her age, July 4th, 2020, a date that can be written 4/7 after her Summer of Love comments on CNN with Chris Cuomo. Bezos wasn't the only one raking it in, though. So were the big bankers in Switzerland, where Trump gloated on January 21st and where Bill Gates said on January 22nd, 2017, also at the World Economic Forum, "I think an epidemic, either naturally caused or intentionally caused, is the most likely thing to cause, say, 10 million excess deaths. It's pretty surprising how little preparedness there is for it." He then stuttered out, "Now it's tricky because this is a global problem," regarding those Swiss bankers, reminding us that Bill Gates comes from a family of bankers. They stood to make a killing and profit from interest after the Senate approved at least $2 trillion and as much as $6 trillion in stimulus on March 25, 2020. To appreciate that sum of money, realize that 1 trillion seconds is nearly 32,000 years. So if you made $1 per second, you'd have to work for 32,000 years to make your first trillion. That's actually a really good way to put it, Zach. As for the date March 25th, or 325, it should remind you what we learned about the Bank of England, being 325 years old at the time of the pandemic, and the territory they control, City of London Corporation, equating to 325 in Gematria. Consider their flag is the Knights Templar Red Cross, which is very similar to the flag of Switzerland. And March 25, 2020 was the 85th day of the leap year, corresponding with the simple English gematria of Templar, summing to 85. Furthermore, in tarot, the 20th card is the Judgment card, and the card's illustration also bears a red cross. If you have never heard the phrase, "All wars are bankers' wars," now you have. With that in mind, consider the Knights Templar were once the military might of the Church during the time of the Crusades, and the world's first bankers, because they had the ability to protect the assets of others, as well as all that they had pillaged from the Holy Lands while crusading. Furthermore, for centuries, war has been a profitable game for the Catholic Church, and it is for this reason Washington, D.C., under their control, invaded Afghanistan, October 7th, 2001, the day leaving 85 days in the year. The difference between 2001 and 2020 is that the war this time is on germs, instead of on boogeymen in caves, on the other side of the world. And keep in mind, 19 years before 2001, it was October 14, 1982, when the war on drugs was declared, the day leaving 78 days left in the year. No matter the difference, the same outcome was reached for the bankers, and that was profit through the interest of the loans given to governments to fight their truly needless wars, at the expense of the people of the nations duped by these horrendous lies, who will forever pay the bills with their tax burdens, freedoms, and with the lives of their children. For one last point on Trump's January 21st appearance at the World Economic Forum, from that date to March 25, 2020, the date of the biggest loan in world history being given the go-ahead, was a span of 65 days, connecting to the gematria of Knights Templar, Switzerland, United Kingdom, Bank of England, and pandemic. It also connects to the gematria of decade of vaccines, equating to 65, that Bill Gates launched January 29, 2010, with ambitions of vaccinating the world's population, exactly 1 decade before January of 2020, when the first case of coronavirus in the United States was confirmed in his own backyard. Not to mention, Gates established his vaccine alliance organization, Gavi, in Seattle, July 12, 1999. and now it is headquartered in Switzerland. Those are things we will dissect in the chapter dedicated to Bill Gates. For another 65 in Switzerland, CERN, established in Switzerland on September 29, 1954, was 65 years old at the time of the pandemic and massive bank loan given to the United States. They're the scientific organization credited with the creation of the World Wide Web, or the Internet as we know it. CERN is also an organization that gained much attention because of the Da Vinci Code series, with the title Angels and Demons, something we'll touch more on when we get to Tom Hanks, who starred in the film series, including the title Inferno, that released on Bill Gates' 61st birthday, October 28, 2016, a date with 74 numerology. As we'll soon learn, Inferno is a film involving a storyline of a billionaire attempting to depopulate the world by means of a virus, a narrative that has a major parallel with the ambitions of Bill Gates himself. In the chapter dedicated to the actor, we'll learn not only about that, but also how Hanks ties in with the larger coronavirus ritual. And in case you have forgotten, he was the first major celebrity to be diagnosed with the virus, along with his wife, Rita Wilson, both of whom starred in the film Sleepless in Seattle, set in the city where the first case of coronavirus was confirmed in the United States, and of course, the home of Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos. For now, I should note, in light of what we have learned so far about the number 93, the actor's full name. Thomas Jeffrey Hanks, as well as Wuhan coronavirus, both equate to 93 with reverse Pythagorean, matching the year 1993, when Sleepless in Seattle released. As another reminder, because it can't be said enough, all of these rituals have everything to do with time. And on the subject, recall that in tarot, the 20th card is the judgment card, and in Pythagorean gematria, tarot, time, and judge each equate to 20, corresponding with the year 2020, and the fact that Saturn, summing to 93, is connected to not only time, but death and judgment. Furthermore, there is something referred to as the 27-year return of Saturn, and from 1993 to 2020 is 27 years later, a number corresponding with the Pythagorean gematria of ritual, equating to 27. And for the coincidence theorist out there, who might be in doubt, from Tom Hanks' July 9, 2019 birthday to his coronavirus diagnosis, news on March 11, 2020, the same day the pandemic was declared from the World Health Organization in Switzerland. It was his 247th day of his age, corresponding with the Gematria of Seattle, Washington, equating to 247 with reverse simple English. Again, it's all about time, and you can prove it every single time with Gematria. And as we'll learn in the next chapter, 2020 is 247 years after the 201 Jesuits that saved the order, a fact that is not unrelated to the name Event 201, the name of the coronavirus outbreak simulation of October 18, 2019, the same day the Military World Games began in Wuhan, China. Games that trace back to the year 1995. Emphasis on 95 and Rome, the home of the Jesuits. On the subject of the number 95, a number we have learned is highly symbolic of the Jesuit order and Anthony Fauci, the Jesuit, the man having a surname equating to 95 and being born on Christmas Eve, 1940, a date with 95 numerology. I want to conclude this chapter with a powerful example of how rituals are performed in accordance with the calendar and gematria, and I want you to appreciate how special the ritual of Anthony Fauci's wild first pitch to open the shortened MLB season due to coronavirus on July 23, 2020, when the defending MLB championships, the Washington Nationals, lost to Anthony Fauci's hometown, New York Yankees. In that same game, the man considered to be the best pitcher in baseball, who lost to the Nationals in the World Series a season earlier, Garrett Cole, made his debut with the Yankees, earning his 95th career win in the regular season. Not only that, he had signed with the Yankees on December 11, 2019, his 95th day of his age, having been born September 8, 1990, what is considered the Virgin Mary's birthday. With regards to his date of birth, it is the 251st day of the year, which is the 54th prime number, and in addition to baseball equating to 54, a game of 54 outs, so does Jesuit order. Furthermore, July 23, 2020 was the day that is celebrated as the helical rising of Sirius, the dog star. Fittingly, the word Sirius has simple English gematria of 95, and helical rising equates to 251 with reverse simple English, corresponding with Cole's birthday. Beyond that, and adding to our ongoing list of 56, opening day and first pitch equate to 56 with Pythagorean, the same as Anthony Fauci, Washington, D.C., and Society of Jesus. And with regards to the latter two names, they sum to 187 as well, the same as New York Yankees, who Cole was making his debut for. Plus, July 23, 2020, the coronavirus season start date, was a date with 70 numerology, in a span of 155 days from Fauci's upcoming birthday, where coronavirus equates to 56, 70, 142, and 155 with the base ciphers, and the NBA season was suspended on its 142nd day, 3/11/20, and NASCAR returned on 5/21/20, the 142nd day of the year. And fittingly, the 98 car won on 5/21, 521, the 98th prime number. And that's the end of Chapter 3. Chapter 4 starts on page 64. Event 201, the Jesuit Order, Anthony Fauci, and the Pope.